Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London and see what they're working on. Hello, London.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm Paul Henley. On today's NewsHour, the violence in Northern Ireland that police are calling racist thuggery, and lessons from the first clear images of the South Pole of the Sun. BBC NewsHour is coming up at 9 on WNYC.
We have sunshine across the area right now, 75 in the city with sun, but we also have an air quality alert until midnight. Unhealthy air for sensitive groups, so be careful. Our high today will be close to 90 degrees under lots of sunshine. It is 8:52.
WNYC support comes from Poster House, a design-forward museum for posters located in Chelsea. The museum focuses on the hidden stories in poster history and offers a look into design, society, and culture. Learn more at posterhouse.org/WNYC. WNYC's health coverage is supported by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, bridging science and the arts by supporting books such as Chris Fitch's Wild Cities, Discovering New Ways of Living in the Modern Urban Jungle. More at sloan.org.
This year, New Yorkers are going to the polls to choose their next mayor. I'm Brian Lehrer. Join me alongside colleagues from the city and New York One as we moderate the final Democratic candidates debate before early voting begins on Saturday. Tonight at 7 on WNYC.
Changing views of labor unions on immigrant labor.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, dedicated to helping businesses save time on office tasks and empower leaders with business buying solutions that support teams to focus on growing the business. Learn about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. First, the House of Representatives is scheduled to vote today on a bill that would formalize some of the White House's spending cuts for money that had already been allocated by Congress. This includes money for public broadcasting. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer reports.
The bill would claw back more than $9 billion in funding Congress once voted for. It's the first step in the Trump administration's efforts to formalize some of the cuts from DOGE, the cost-cutting commission once headed by Elon Musk. Since Congress has the power of the purse, only lawmakers can officially take money back. The legislation would claw back 2 years' worth of federal funding for PBS and public radio stations, totaling about $1 billion. Most of the cuts would come from foreign aid spending. That reportedly includes money for things like reproductive health and support for LGBTQ communities. The White House formally sent the request for the funding clawbacks to Congress last week. That started the clock ticking on a 45-day deadline for lawmakers to approve the bill. They only need a simple majority that avoids a Senate filibuster. If the House okays the measure today, it will go on to the Senate. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
Now to labor unions and union members opposing the Trump administration's workplace raids and deportations. One focus has been the arrest of Service Employees Union official David Huerta at a protest in Los Angeles on Friday. He has been charged with a federal felony, allegedly impeding an officer. Another focus of some union members, the mistaken deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a trades worker apprentice who is now under grand jury indictment. This kind of solidarity would have been less common a generation ago. Some in the labor movement had seen undocumented immigrants as low-cost competitors for union jobs. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman reports.
2 days ago, this was the sound in Lower Manhattan. Alongside immigrant rights groups protesting ICE deportation sweeps was the Labor Committee to Defend Immigrants, a coalition including unions representing teachers, Teamsters, service workers, and others in New York. Maeve Campbell is a social worker and organizer for the group. She says the Labor Committee isn't just marching.
United Federation of Teachers, which are public school teachers. They've formed committees in several different schools in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, and distributed Know Your Rights information to defend students, where the bottom line is they're not going to take our kids.
But it's not all smooth sailing.
We've made some efforts in the Labor Committee to get construction workers involved. Well, guess who does construction in New York? I mean, it's undocumented immigrant workers. People are very, very afraid.
Immigrants have played a crucial role in the union movement, organizing garment workers in New York, industrial workers in the Midwest, farm workers in California. But in the post-war period, relations soured, says Haley Brown at the Center for Economic and Policy Research.
The labor movement, unfortunately, had kind of a fractious relationship with immigration. There were concerns that immigrants were going to erode bargaining power for union members.
Sometimes it got ugly, says UCLA labor historian Toby Higbee.
Were there some unions that were calling the INS on undocumented workers, even in the 1970s? That's true. That did happen. But unions began to see that was a losing strategy.
One reason, says Haley Brown, simple demographics.
A higher share of union members are foreign-born now. Their share has actually almost doubled, 8.4% in 1994. Today, it is 15.4%.
Which means, says Toby Higbee,
given that so many working people are either immigrants, the children of immigrants, or live in mixed status families or communities, it is in the interest of both the immigrant rights movement and the labor movement to collaborate.
In Chicago, factory worker Maribel Martinez says a union drive at her workplace is pressing for better pay and safer working conditions. The group organizing the workers is also educating them about their rights as immigrants.
Well, in general, we are not afraid of immigration coming to our work.
Martinez says most of her fellow employees have permission to work in the U.S., and they're more worried about having their rights as workers violated than they are of immigration raids. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Checking markets, S&P futures are down 0.3%. NASDAQ futures are down 0.2%. President Trump said last night the U.S. could send out take-it-or-leave-it letters to countries around the world soon, setting levels for U.S. tariffs. A ramp-up in trade war rhetoric and negotiations with U.S. trading partners are ongoing.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by MarketWatch. From housing prices to inflation, the market is uncertain. MarketWatch has tools to help navigate the road ahead. MarketWatch, don't short yourself. And by Total Wine and More, helping shoppers love what they find this summer season at TotalWine.com. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
The United Nations says there are nearly 138 million children working worldwide. The UN Children's Fund and the International Labor Organization have worked together on a report out today which shows some progress despite a missed deadline to end children's employment globally. Here's the BBC's Max Horbury.
More than 1 in every 12 children works. This represents, the United Nations say, an improvement, but it still means that 138 million children aged between 5 and 17 work, equivalent almost to the entire population of Russia. Nearly 40% of those children have been risking their health, working in mines, factories or fields. Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest number of child laborers, while most progress has been made in the Asia-Pacific region. There had been an aim to bring the global number down to 0 by 2025, but at the current rate, it will take hundreds of years before the world is free of child labor.
Max Horbury with our news partners at the BBC. And the Wall Street Journal has a story this morning on companies tracking Latino consumers pulling back from shopping amid the Trump administration's deportation campaign. Consumer goods, food, beverage companies, including Coca-Cola and restaurants, are seeing a pullback in buying, which already showed up in some first quarter sales calculations. The report puts spending power by Hispanic consumers at $2.1 trillion. In Los Angeles, I'm David Brancaccio. It's the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.